I've got one hand and I've got one finger. It was a 70 degrees Celsius fire. My right hand literally stayed behind. So from 11 months until I was around 15 years old, I've always been in hospital. Hospital was my second home. I'm done. Like, oh my God, can you see how scary I am? People are even like staring. I got burnt when I was 11 months old. I was sleeping on the bed and then the candle then fell over the bed. And then my mom was in the next rooms and then they just started smelling smoke. And then they ran into the bedroom and then they found me burning. It was a 70 degrees Celsius fire. And by the time my mom picked me up from the bed, my right hand literally stayed behind. I lost 4 fingers in the progress. My head skull was showing. My ear was completely burnt off. My face was completely So from 11 months until I was around 15 years old, I've always been in hospital. Hospital was my second home. Sometimes I would write my exams in hospital. So the types of surgeries that I've gone through, the 104 was quite hectic. They had to reconstruct my entire face, fix my lips, my nose, my eyes. The ear is man-made. My hand, my fingers, I mean, these little stompies here were created. They were man-made by Professor J. Scholz. He also sort of like became my father, really. When I got burned, it was in 1989 and Black people didn't have medical aids at the time. So I was taken to Garangua Hospital and he was there and he transferred me to Mulmud. And he said to my mom, listen, I just want you to figure out the hospital fees. I will sort the child out because there's more facilities to that side, right? The time that he wanted to finish operating me at 15, because once you're above 15 years, then it takes longer for the surgeries to heal. So, I mean, he squeezed everything. There were times when I would go to hospital and he would have like 7 or 8 different operations on me. And I think that's where the comparison also like comes in, where you're like, no, actually, why was my life like that? But in hindsight, you look at that life and you're like, you know what, that was the best possible thing, at the time. That's where gratefulness also like creeps in, to say that, I was at the best hospitals and these are the best nurses. We sort of like became family. And my mom would just go from corporate to corporate just asking for money. And they would pay for my hospital fees, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000. It was insane. Like the way people just have beautiful hearts. Amount of people who would say, oh, like, come back when the surgery is not done, just like return. I have a lot of people behind me, and that's the reason why I am who I am here today. It was an entire community village of people who raised funds for me, people who would come through. And it's only in 1994 when my mom now finally had medical aid. Big ups to all of those corporates. Big ups to all of those CEOs who were so friendly. I mean, I would be in hospital and people would just come with like chocolates and flowers. I remember there was a time when I was a teenager and this lady, like brand new, like Calvin Klein clothes with like tags and everything. And she's like, oh my God, I just heard of your story and I love you so much. What do you need? My hospital fees sometimes would be like 300,000 rands and one corporate would just like pay it off. I remember the very first time when I was teased, I was 9 years old. And a fellow learner of mine said to me that, oh my God, you're so burnt, you look like a franchise meat. It really just stuck with me, because I'm a girl, I'm supposed to be beautiful, like a Barbie girl. Actually never be beautiful. So just that comment just made me think a lot about my own beauty. And that is what transitioned me to try and commit suicide. My very first suicide attempt, I was in grade 5 and I took detergents made a beautiful cocktail. It was Jack, it was Stay Soft, it was soap, Sunlight Liquid, it was Domestos. It was hectic. And I just folded up in a glass and I drank it. And then nothing happened to me. I was so mad. And then when I was 15 years old, I also tried committing suicide again with my late brother. We stood in the middle of the road waiting for a car to just come and and it was late at night. When you see that like God is always there, the person that came through was my mom's colleague. And she almost actually like bumped us because we were wearing very, very dark clothes. And she saw us very late and she was like, Dee! And she stopped and then she like came out and she's like, what's happening? And then she saw us and now like we are hugging each other there in the middle of the road and we're just like crying our eyes out. And then she recognizes us. And then she's like, Tabo, Tolo, what are you guys doing here in the middle of the road? What's happening? And we're like, no, we just want to die. And how it got to my late brother was that while I was writing my suicide note, my brother walked in and then he read the letter as well. And then he was like, you know what? If you want to kill yourself, then we might as well just both die. And my mom just started crying. And then grade 11, I took 300 pills. And then I wrote a note to my mom and I said, hi mom, thank you for your love, thank you for your sacrifices, but I just don't want to be here. And then I drank the pills and nothing happened still. So when puberty hit, that's what led to my third suicide attempt, because I was like, well, who's gonna love me with these scars, with how I look? I'd also faced a lot of rejection in my life where you are dating someone and they would say things to you like, oh no, but you shouldn't tell people. And in that moment, because of your low self-esteem, you are just happy to just be in a relationship. So it was just like a lot, man. Like by the time I actually started properly dating in varsity, I was so wounded already. Yeah, so it was a very long journey of like rejection, of self-doubt, of not even seeing your self-worth, as a person because of what everybody else has said about you, because of what you have said about yourself. I would walk somewhere and the moment somebody just stares at me, that's it. I'm done. Like, oh my God, can you see how scary I am? People are even like staring. And I would go home and I would just like cry my lungs out. I think it only got to when I started healing, but also that was also another facet as well, which was, so in matric, we went to my friend's place, the one friend that I did have in Soshanguve. And how I had that friend was, my mom was friends with this other grandmother, and then she found this beautiful girl there, and at the time we were both doing grade 9. And my mom said, you know what, like my daughter's actually very good with maths and I actually want you to be friends with her. In fact, if you could get her out of that house, I could give you money to take her out to the movies. She like came through as if she doesn't even know. She was just like, hey babes, your mom said that you're very good with maths. Can you please help me out? I was like, yeah, no, of course. And then that's how the friendship really started. And then I only found out like years later that, that your mom even tried to bribe me with money. And I was like, oh, this woman, because she just wanted to get me out of the house. And I'm like, no, I'm not going out because people are staring at me. So this girl then made me meet her sister and we were just like close. This one time when we were doing grade 12, the sister had a DSTV. And we went to the sister's place and she was like, you know what guys, I have visitors, so I'm gonna ship you guys to my church because there's a youth bride there. I remember walking in the gate and one of the things that broke my walls when I walked into that church was people looked at me like a normal person. And I was like, are they seeing what I'm seeing every time I look in the mirror? And they're like, hi, how you doing? Oh my God. And I was like, no, wait, what's happening? So then the pastor then came to us and then, can I please have a chat with you guys? And then we went to his office and then he started talking to us about God. Questions that I asked him was that if God is so good, why would he allow something like this to happen to me? And he answered me, what he does know is that everything happens for a purpose. Okay, so then what is the reason why something like this would happen to me? And I was only 11 months old. Like, I couldn't have sinned. I couldn't have done anything wrong. And I started seeking my purpose. Started praying every single day. And I was like, God, what is my purpose? And this was my first year at varsity. And I would pray and I would wait. And this one time, I slept and I heard an audible voice saying to me, your purpose is to bring hope and healing to my people. Before I met my husband, I met a guy. And this guy loved me in a way that I've always wanted to be loved. He would treat me like a real queen. So I was still at UJM. So the apartment that we found was in Northcliffe. Outside by the parking lot, here's this guy. He's by his car. In his car, so I'm like, hi, how are you? Where do I find like a taxi? And all I heard in that moment was, hi, how are you doing? I was like, oh my God. So I'm like, oh, really? And then he dropped me off at varsity. And then whilst we were driving, he's like, I don't know you. I was like, yeah, we just moved in yesterday. And then he's like, oh, great. What's your unit number? And then I was like, 186 or something. And then he's like, really? I'm at 187. Obviously at that time, I had already said that like we were robbed. And then he was like, oh no, I'm so sorry, guys. You guys can use my fridge, if you need to, honey. I was like, woo, honey. And then we later found out that we were both, in the media industry. And then I would go to his house to go watch TV. The rest is history. The day we found out that we were pregnant, I was cooking porridge. It made me sore. And then we went to Millpark and then they said, oh, congratulations. And I was like, what do you mean? They were like, you're pregnant. And I was like, what? And then we found out that we are twins. Did I find any challenges in being a mom? No, absolutely not. I've never really had a problem with conceiving. Also, because I'm anemic, while I was pregnant, I changed my entire diet. Basically, I really took care of myself during my pregnancy. Have I always had a bubbly personality? Yes. Before, it was very exaggerated because I was still healing and I just wanted people to just see that side of me. Whereas I've learned to fall in love with the true me, therefore people should love me for who I am. I was the type of person that would have 6, 7 people all the time around me, all the time. And it would be different people. But now I've less than 5 friends. And I think that comes with age as well, where you start seeing the fakeness, where you start realizing that people are here because of what they can get from you. It's very easy for me to make friends, but now I'm very selective with who I allow in my space. You'd rather be with people that you can be 100% yourself with than be with people who you need to pretend around. You've been told long enough that you're not worth it, that you constantly need to prove to yourself that I am worth it. I've also always been the type of person that wants to do things myself. I don't know, maybe it's a way of proving to myself that I can do it. So it was like a constant battle of just proving myself all the time. That the moment you start mastering who you are, that you start finding your power and you start living within your power. When I started in the media, I was a nobody. Now everybody knows who I am, simply because I found my power. I found who I was, and I stood by it. And I said, I'm actually going to show other people what is possible for them and what they can do for themselves. And I think it's such a beautiful thing when you stop doubting yourself, as a human being, and you say, actually, what more can I do? When you start pushing yourself. And I think I am that epitome to show people, to say that, hey, listen, if I've got one hand and I've got one finger and I'm doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you've got 10 fingers and 2 hands, honey, you can do so much more. That is where everything happens for a purpose comes in, to say that my purpose, my life, is to show others how to reach their full potential.